Hello.
Yay! Super proud of you. Way to go.
All right, so we went in the back door, but we're here. All
Yay!
right, we're gonna mute it because, as you can hear, I have company.
Yeah.
She's saying hi, Amy.
Hi, Delilah. There's my baby D.
Here's your friend. Oh, your friend. She's like an Amy shark.
Amy, do you want to go to the first slide now and let us go over those things and get started?
Absolutely. So as you can see, we are here at Trauma Training Tuesday virtual edition. This is a collaborative effort between Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma, WAMS, Worcester Area Mission Society, and CYCJ, the Collaborative for Youth and Community Justice. I am going to be doing most of the content, and the amazing and talented previous Trauma Training Tuesday instructor, Dr. Lori Dawson, is going to be our mistress of ceremonies. So I'm going to turn it over her to talk about CYCJ.
Hi, everybody. As Amy said, this is a joint venture with lots of people who are concerned in the community about what this social distancing is doing to us individually and collectively. And CYCJ, the Coalition for Youth and Community Justice, is the parent umbrella organization for Worcester Acts, along with some other things. And our motto is science plus love equals justice. We are a group of researchers and community activists who engage in participatory research and out there working in the community to try to make people's lives a little bit better. And one of the things that we have been thinking about is the fact that people are so socially isolated. Amy and her team at Worcester Acts instituted the Trauma Training Tuesdays several months ago, and we were doing it once a month, and decided that during this time, doing it twice a month to be able to keep people connected would be a really good goal. And so that's why we are here for our first Tuesday of the month. So from now on, for the foreseeable future, we'll be doing the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday with virtual meetings. And I'm really happy that all of you are able to join us today. I don't know about all of you, but for those of us who are extroverted social butterflies, this has been a pretty trying time. So I'm gonna turn it over to Amy now.
All right, you can hear me now? How about Narissa, would you mind really quickly talking about Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma? Is she there still? All right, Worcester, you can hear me, right? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma came out of the youth, oh, there she is.
Yes, I'm here, it was on mute, sorry.
All right, Narissa, tell us about Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma.
So Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma, do you want to know what we're doing right now with our clients? Or
yes, that sounds great.
Okay,
and
so
I can just see the bottom of your head. Oh, there you go. Now I can see. Oh, look how beautiful. Now I see you.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're reaching out to our clients, whether they're active or inactive, and we are reaching out to everyone and just trying to see where families are at during this quarantine, if they have the resources they need, trying to help them deal with any struggles they may be having, trying to connect them to people in the community, and just basically a mental wellness check. Some of our clients have left the area. They're no longer in Massachusetts, but the quarantine is happening all over the United States. So we're still able to talk and process through whatever they're going through, whether they're at home helping out with elderly parents, whether they have special needs children, just how they're spending their days, sharing a lot of information, sharing a lot about myself in this household as well, giving people helpful, tips, just letting them know that we are all in this together. And, pretty much that's what we're doing.
So Narissa, as Narissa said, we're still taking referrals. Families with a child under 10 are in need of extra support. We're not doing face-to-face, but as you heard, Narissa and DJ are both talking to families, doing whatever they can. And Narissa, I'm going to have you a little bit more in the kind of action steps of the slide deck.
Sure.
Mary, would you mind talking a little bit about WAMS and kind of what has brought WAMS to the partnership?
Sure. Hi, I'm Mary Robbins, and WAMS is a United Church of Christ organization. We are a faith-based organization. We connect people with organizations and partners who really want to change the world for the better. Churches are historically focused on mission, and what mission means in today's world is a little bit different than it might have meant in the past. And so we do a lot of youth programming and helping kids understand things like cultural humility and the kinds of terms that you all, or many of you who are practitioners, use on a daily basis really comes into our work in terms of helping people start from a place of gratitude and kind of shared, us and them, really no givers or receivers, but we're all just people trying to work together. And so in terms of Trauma Training Tuesday, we're so happy to host when we were able to get together, and we're looking forward to the day that we can do that again at our location at Sixth Institute in Worcester. We, in the meantime, are talking with ministers. Linda Michelle is our chairwoman of our board, and she has a role specifically with the UCC that reaches out to ministers. And we're finding that there are a lot of people feeling like they should be doing more. A lot of people may be doing too much. And so that particular community is one that is not necessarily a service delivery, but a lot of people turn to. And so this kind of programming is really critical. Holly Dolan's on the call. One of our programs is Summer Cubs at Woodland Academy, and we partner with Worcester Public Schools, Woodland Academy, and the Clark Urban Institute. And so we're really hoping to get that up and running this summer once things kind of get back a little bit more to normal, knowing that the kids are going to need more support than ever. And so we have really dedicated staff of professionals and volunteers who deliver very interactive programming to the kids with really great success in terms of reducing the summer slide, and that slide's bigger than ever. So that's going to be my biggest focus once we get back. But we also look forward to hosting everyone again at our building.
Lori Dawson, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you to talk us through your activity. And again, I just want to say I'm here with Dr. Dawson, Narissa Harper-Ketter. Caitlin Borski is our Worcester West Childhood Trauma intern this year. She's got a couple of slides she's going to talk to us about. And then you just heard from Mary. So, ta-da.
You can move it down one more slide. That'd be great.
This one?
Yes.
Or back? Okay.
So for those of you who were on a little bit earlier, I tried to send you on a sensory scavenger hunt to find something that was either something really cold, something that smells nice, something that tastes good, or something that feels nice. And the reason I asked you to do that is because I think we're being bombarded by all sorts of information, and some of that is, how you can express. But so many of these things, people are like, oh, well, I don't have time to meditate for an hour, or I don't have time, given everything else that's going on, to add another thing into my schedule. And that old adage about, you need to put your oxygen mask on first if you're going to take care of others rings true here. So I wanted to just spend a minute thinking about some very quick ways that we could reduce stress. One of those things is through our senses. People who meditate on a regular basis have developed a habit of mind where they can concentrate without sort of external props or maybe just focusing on the breath. But for a lot of us, that's not enough, especially when we first get started. So a couple of quick things. If you can see my little tiny thumbnail over here. Here's my something frozen. It's a frozen orange. Yes, I do in fact keep, well, this is more of a Tangelo than an orange, truth be told. But I keep a frozen one in the freezer because when I'm feeling really stressed and panicky, I hold it. And the cold really does kind of ground me, bring me back to center. There's some good scientific evidence about this that we don't really need to get into today, but something that is cold can really help you focus on that thing. And the idea is, whatever the thing is, to use your full awareness, focusing on it. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? This I've had out for about 15 minutes and it's not as frozen as it used to be. It's still cold, but it's a little squishy. And now I can smell it. I can smell more of the orange here. For people who have panic attacks, there's actually some good physiological data that says immersing your face into cold water really can help calm a panic attack. So this is one example of something that's cold. Something that smells nice. Again, to focus on the breathing, there are lots of breathing exercises, and some of the exercises that I'm talking about here are listed on this slide. So if you wanted to go back and spend some more time with them, you can. But something that smells nice to you, and that might be different. I just grabbed myself my favorite Yankee candle that I have burning most of the time. But something that smells nice can bring you back to a calm place. And sometimes you can combine that with breathing. Like I said, there are all sorts of breathing exercises. I just want to go over the quickest one that I know with you. And that's to put one hand on your chest and one hand just beneath your ribs on your diaphragm. And this is called diaphragmatic breathing for those of you who are musically inclined, who are singers. So for the first one, just leave your hands there and just take a regular breath like you normally would. Don't try to change anything. But notice how that feels. Notice the position of your hands. And once you've done that, now I'd like you to try to take a really deep breath so that you're paying attention to the hand that's beneath your ribs rising and falling. So I'm going to shut up and do this myself for a second. So this is something you can do. You don't need any props. And you can do it as long or as short as you want. You can do it just once. They recommend you do it 3 or 4 times, but once is better than nothing. It forces you, when you're paying attention to your hand, to feel your hand on your diaphragm moving up and down. And that kind of deep breathing slows your central nervous system down and really helps to calm you. And in general, I tend to be a pretty shallow breather if I'm not paying specific attention to it. So this is something that I do, just when I think about it during the day, if I just have 30 seconds to take a couple of deeper breaths to calm myself down. Something that feels good or feels interesting. I'm actually sitting here with a really fuzzy blanket, a throw that I have over my lap that I just like to rub my hands over. It's the same thing that they say, like when you pet your dog or your cat, that sensation is really soothing. Also, when you pet another animal, dog, cat, or human, that also releases oxytocin, which is something that makes you in general feel good and bonded. One of the reasons why pets, and I guess pet humans, whatever you might want to call them, are good for you. And then finally, the snack. One of the things that Jon Kabat-Zinn is famous for those of you who don't know him, he is a doctor who started the UMass Med Center for Mindfulness, and they have lots of good resources there. But people who do meditation want to stress that meditation does not mean like you need to move to Tibet and become a monk. Anything that you do with mindful intention can be a source of meditation. So Jon Kabat-Zinn has a famous exercise about eating a raisin. And that link is there for you. I don't have any raisins. I have a Cheez-It. So here's my Cheez-It. But the idea is that, something ordinary. I've eaten a bazillion Cheez-Its in my life. I sometimes shove many of them into my mouth at the same time and swallow them without mindful intention. But the idea behind the raisin exercise is to look at this object and experience it in a new way. So he talks about picking it up. And what I'm noticing is that this is a buffalo wing Cheez-It, and there's like a little like powdery stuff on the top of it. That must be the buffalo stuff that I've never really paid so much attention. So he talks about holding the object and seeing the object, really looking at it. And I'm looking at like little ridges on my Cheez-It here, touching it, sniffing it. He also talked about placing it in your mouth, but not chomping it down, just placing it in your mouth. And I'm not going to do that because I can't talk and place and chew at the same time. Well, I could, but it would be ugly. So put it in your mouth and then kind of let it sit there and taste it. Maybe roll it around in your mouth. Does it feel differently or taste differently as you move it from one side to the other? In the case of a Cheez-It, it would definitely be changing texture if I had it in my mouth as it sort of melted. And then swallowing it and paying attention to that. So it's really anything that you do with mindful intention can be a source of meditation, can help you calm down. And in the case of eating, a lot of the things that have been talked about online is a lot of stress eating. And I have mixed feelings about this. As someone with an eating disorder, I really am upset that people seem to be shaming people for stress eating, but it is a real problem for a lot of people. And in fact, mindful eating is a way for some people with eating disorders to be able to enjoy their eating experience more fully and without having to resort to some kind of eating disorders. So there are all sorts of ways in our life, everyday life, that we can do something that helps relieve our stress that takes a minute, 2 minutes, doesn't have to be a big thing. So I hope that some of these things, one of these things or more, might work for you in a moment of stress. And I'm going to then now turn it back to Amy, who's going to continue with our talk.
Thank you very much, Lori. So our goals for today, I've got probably about an hour's worth of content, and whoops, again, we're all about being chill. So come, go, mute yourself, turn your video on or off, whatever you want to do is cool with us. Unfortunately, we're not in person, because if we were, we would be giving you a most delicious lunch and you would get to see each other in person. I've probably said anytime I get a stage how much I love this community. I'm so proud of this community all the time. And this kind of drama, this pandemic is no exception to kind of the pride I feel in our community and kind of what we're about and who we are. So just thinking about today and what would help, we put together a couple goals. And again, my people from my team are here to help me out with this. We want today for you to just have a basic understanding that behaviors exist along a continuum of responses, and those have various effects and are varyingly effective. I find, and I've done so much trauma training, sorry in advance for people that have been to my trainings before, it might be repetitive, but the more we understand the symptoms of trauma, the better we can deal with those. It gives us a little kind of space between ourselves and what's happening. And that space is that kind of where we can have perspective, is really a place where we can heal. One of the best pieces of feedback I got on trauma training was from somebody who had experienced lots and lots of stress in her life. And she said, you know, your training helped me see that this is about what happened to me. This isn't my personality. And that was really helpful. And, you know, so for me, I was thrilled to hear that. That's kind of what we're hoping for. And to be able to respond to what's going on now with more empathy and understanding of ourselves and others is absolutely what we're hoping for. We're hoping for people to be kinder to themselves, especially. We also are hoping to give you some really practical things you can use now, like Dr. Dawson just did, ways to ground yourself, ways to bring yourself some calm. I've been in a lot of Zooms and talked to a lot of people, and we are all really struggling with this stuff right now. So it's absolutely normal. This is a very bizarre, abnormal situation. And so, you know, you're doing the right things. You're doing what everyone's doing. This training is being recorded. We are going to post it and share it. It will be edited a little bit so we don't have so much noise from the beginning. And we also have archived the one that Reverend Payson did a couple of weeks ago. I think it was like 3 weeks ago. And his was so super helpful for me. So if you didn't get a chance to see that, check that out. So those are my goals for the next hour. To give you just the kind of overview of trauma, I thought that that was a pretty great picture right there, right? You got the pre-apocalypse and post-apocalypse. Not to be high drama like we're in an apocalypse, but the recognition that who we were before this and who we are now is going to be different, and there's just no getting around that. One of the exciting things that I've found about doing trauma work and being able to talk about trauma is that it's a great framework for talking about almost everything. We understand trauma and trauma informed to mean that we recognize that your life is going on in your mind. Your mind creates your reality. And that sounds really kind of out there, but really we're all having experiences our brain is telling us how to respond. And so when we recognize that trauma impacts the way we think, then we recognize the impact it's going to have on our behaviors, and that helps us. So trauma informed just means understanding a person's experiences to understand their behavior and its lifelong consequences. In the world of trauma, we recognize that unaddressed, untreated trauma is going to spill out in your life in ways that might not be so great, that you might not enjoy. And so again, understanding that that's what's going on can help you have a better life quality. Before I talk about anything usually in the realm of people, I think it's really important to ground ourselves in culture and intersectionality. Intersectionality is definitely a word you've heard a lot if you're a Clark student, but for many other people, what is that? All that means is that most of us are all of us are members of more than one group. We might be male or female, we might be white, black, we all have multiple identities, and these identities kind of impact the experience we have with the world and the way the world experiences us. So it's important to know that the groups we belong to are going to impact our stigma level, our stress level, and what we believe to be normal is going to be impacted by our culture and our position in that culture. We know that in our country and our culture, and I even could say the world, different groups are not afforded the same amount of power. We know that in many contexts, men have more power. People that are white have more power. People that are heterosexual have more power. And that is going to impact all of us when we're in a power group and when we're in not a power group. Racism, sexism, heterosexism, any form of oppression is going to kind of increase our baseline stress levels and the way we interact with the world around us. It's also important to know that there's more stigma, mental health stigma, among new immigrant groups. I am always amazed at how much stigma exists in our world and how much it impacts on all of us. But in other cultures, it's even more so, more dramatic. We're still kind of in the dark ages here, but the rest of the world is not all that far, kind of can sometimes be seen as being in the dark ages. Different cultures have historically viewed mental illness as a weakness, a character flaw, or even demonic possession, placing blame and shame on the mentally ill person. That's the concept of stigma. So stigma, you've probably heard this word a bunch. It's a mark of disgrace or infamy, a stain or reproach, as on one's reputation. So it's something not so good about mental health and mental illness. Because stigma exists, it keeps individuals and their families from seeking help in the world of mental health. That is the bigger problem. Many mental illnesses have lots of effective treatments, but the problem is people never even get there because they feel so much shame and blame when they're dealing with anything in the realm of mental health. Many people would rather tell their employers that they served time in jail than admit to being in a psychiatric hospital. That's really kind of shocking. When you think about going to the hospital for something physical, you would never have shame about your appendix bursting, yet you might have shame about depression or anxiety. You can see on my slide, I've got that picture, and it's a cartoon, and it's the same picture in both frames. In the top frame, it's a physical illness, and the person says, "I feel like I'm dying," and the helper says, "We need to get you to the hospital right away," right? In the second slide, it's the exact same picture. The person says, "I feel like I'm dying," and the helper says, "But try and remember, a lot of people have it a lot worse than you." Right? And that is the sad truth about mental health and mental illness, that we do think of it as something that's a personal failing for people. And that absolutely is not the case, should not be the case, and what we're trying to address. In our country and in our culture, we have feminized having emotions. Emotions and feelings are seen as feminine and girlish. So to have emotions, to talk about your emotions, to experience emotions can give you the stigma that we experience with sexism. So to that end, men experience a lot more stigma around mental health and mental illness than women do. They have even more challenges talking about what's going on for them and what that means. All right, so now that we talked about stigma and culture, we're on to talking specifically about trauma. And what we mean by trauma, what I mean by trauma in the mental health sense, here's the definition from the American Psychiatric Association. Psychological trauma is an occurrence which is outside the scope of everyday human experience and would be notably distressing to almost anyone. COVID, pandemic, trauma, check. It's not the event itself that determines whether it's traumatic, it's the individual's experience of the event. When we're talking about any kind of trauma, if a couple people are all in the same place experiencing the same thing, they are still going to have very different responses, results. Reverend Payson talked about how people tune in to different aspects of the trauma, and it creates different triggers for them than it might for somebody else. That's important to know. Most of us are living in a household with more than just us, and all of us are going through this at the same time. It's going to look different. It's going to have different, play out differently for people depending on their age, their circumstances, their history, their race, their gender, all of this stuff. So that's important to know. If one thing that I always tell people, if somebody tells you something was traumatic for them, believe them. It was. We get in a lot of trouble when we start comparing what was more traumatic or deciding if your trauma is valid or valuable. That is just a road it never serves us to go down. So just please understand that if people say they're having a hard time, they're having a hard time. It can be something single, a single event, a rape, a fire, witnessing a death, or it can be something that's more long-term, chronic, repetitive, sort of like we're going right now. We're not anywhere near the end of this yet, right? We all know we're kind of honestly in the beginning of it. There's a lot of negative to come, I'm sad to say. We're all going to have loss. We're all going to experience kind of limits to our stress that we may never have experienced before. And understanding that and doing whatever you can to prepare for that is going to be helpful. When something's going on, when in talking about trauma, it engages your stress response. And I think others have already mentioned it, and I'll talk, and we'll talk about it a little more. But just what I realized already, watching the news, I can feel my stress response. I can feel my breathing start to go shallow. I can feel, I talk about it as my blood boiling. Like that is stress, right? And all of us are having our stress response engaged right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about post-traumatic stress disorder, but we're in it. There's nothing post about what's going on right now. And so recognizing and trying to get a handle on your stress response is going to serve you well. When you're like, I have had to limit watching news, and I've had to limit what sources, and because I immediately feel my anxiety start kicking in and going right into outer limits right off the bat. And so I just need to stop that. And a lot of times I will try to very intentionally put myself in a better mood with music or watching funny videos or doing something that's going to change my mind and my thinking, because that breeds itself, and spending a lot of time there is bad for you on so many levels. Stress is cumulative, meaning it loads up on itself. So the more you can do to keep your stress level low, the better you're going to do to deal with things as they come. And it is cumulative. So when you can get some stressors off your plate, that's going to help you deal with the ones in front of you in a more effective way. Want you all to know, you probably already do know, trauma is common. Okay, this is mostly from the CDC, but according to the CDC, more than half Americans have suffered from at least one traumatic event. We talk about, hopefully people have all heard it, it's finally in the mainstream, but the ACEs study. And ACE meaning adverse childhood experiences. What the ACE study did, it was done by Kaiser Permanente, and they're a big kind of health insurance carrier. And they surveyed their population, and they had a pretty middle class, more white people with, full-time jobs. They looked at their members and they asked them about things that we all would consider to be traumatic. These were the ACEs: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and this is all in your home before you were age 18. If you experienced any of those things, we call that a point in your ACE score. We also give a point for physical neglect, emotional neglect, and for household dysfunction, having a parent with a mental illness or a substance use disorder, having a relative who's incarcerated, being in a single parent household. Any of those things that have happened to you gives you a point on your ACE score. The mind-blowing thing is that this health insurance group looked at every single cause of death, and it correlates with your ACE score. The higher your ACE score, the likelier you are to have an early death from every single cause of death. So to me, what this means is mental health is physical health. When we just look at physical health and treat symptoms, and we don't look at what's been going on with your stress response, your lifelong coping mechanisms, and how those are affecting you, we've really missed the boat. Right? And I think, you know, maybe if good comes out of this, people will recognize that mental health is very real, and maybe we'll get more resources in the world of mental health at the other side of this. And people that have never experienced anything, who might be judgmental about folks that struggle, I think they're going to have more empathy. I hope they have more empathy, because again, this is hard on all of us right now. 1 in 4 of us, so 1 in 5 of us was sexually molested as a child. 1 in 4 was beaten by a parent to the point of a mark being left on the body. 1 in 8 has witnessed their mother being hit. That's not from the CDC, that's from Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. He's considered one of the top trauma therapists, but just hearing that the body keeps the score thing helps you understand how he's thinking about trauma, that it really does manifest in your body. And from his experience, he feels like when we saw bad things happen to our mom, that was really impactful for individuals. The American Academy of Pediatrics also believes that if you've experienced poverty and racism, that should also be a point. We know that being a person of color in American culture brings about all kinds of challenges and traumas. Living in poverty, the same. Whoops. So trauma impacts health. This I also got from like the ACE study, the ACE website, and it talks about all the ways that trauma is going to impact your kind of mind and body. It impairs your memory, your concentration, your new learning, and your ability to focus. That's one of the things I've heard more than anything from people through this experience. They're really struggling to focus. People are struggling to be productive. They're struggling to try to learn new things that they're expected to learn. That's what trauma does to your brain. Trauma has been correlated to heart disease, obesity, addiction, pulmonary illness, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, and cancer. Again, the ACE study. This stuff is going to impact our physical health. Trauma impacts an individual's ability to trust, to cope, and to form healthy relationships. This, for many people that have suffered kind of childhood trauma, this is the most debilitating symptom, the challenges it gives in your relationships. Trauma disrupts your ability to even understand your emotions, to calm yourself down, to control those emotions. And another kind of one for people with childhood trauma, your ability to distinguish between what's safe and what's unsafe. Right? Whatever you had in your family of origin is normal for you. And if that was unsafe feels normal. And that's really challenging for adults who've experienced childhood trauma. One of the other debilitating things is what trauma does to yourself. I think I'll talk even more about it, but Brene Brown's work is amazing. Like, Brene is my hero, and she's really taken a big, everybody who knows me is laughing. They've heard a lot about Brene. Brene Brown considers herself a shame researcher, and so she's really dove into the shame response. And one of the messed up things about trauma, even though we can objectively know that this bad thing was not our fault, it had nothing to do with us as an individual, we still feel this sense of shame when we've been victimized. And that anybody who has been victimized can relate to that. And it's so debilitating to feel that way. So it shapes our belief about ourselves, our others, our ability to be hopeful, and our whole outlook on life can be impacted by trauma. Trauma, so just to back up a little bit, I want to talk, and mostly we're working with kids, but understanding what happens in childhood, I think also really helps adults recognize their own stuff and what's going on for them. When we're a child, one of the first things we do is start setting up our brain, right? We talk about our brain as a use-dependent organ. If you're born in China, you're going to be learning Chinese. If you're born in England, you're going to be learning English. And so your brain adapts to whatever it is you need to learn. We talk about it as a use-dependent organ. It's saying, what do I need to know? That's how I'm going to build myself. Each experience shapes the architecture of the brain. So you can see I've got the pictures here of like the kid path through the woods, right? You've all seen just kind of a path. And then the more it gets worn, the more it looks like a paved road. If this path gets used all the time, it's going to be like a 4-lane highway, right? That's how our brain works. Our brain structures are developing in ways that are creating paths. Emotion supercharges the path creating that happens in our brain. So if it was really awesome or really terrifying, that road is going to get better paved if we're using that kind of paved road analogy. So each experience shapes our brain, emotion supercharges it. The more an experience happens, the better traveled the path is. That becomes a superhighway. So mad and sad kids become mad and sad adults. The most paved road becomes your default. So if you've struggled in childhood and you really, that's going to be where you go in times of stress. You may have learned amazing new skills about how to make yourself happy, how to have the life you want, but under stress, we kind of default to our superhighway. If you've suffered childhood abuse, abuse feels normal and expected in adulthood. So for many of us that are now adults, that are parenting, that are struggling with COVID, that are struggling with all our stuff, the brain we have may cause us to even take this harder or have more trouble coping. One of the cool things is our brain does amazing things to keep us safe. This to me was one of Freud's, the best thing Freud had to contribute was this idea of defense mechanisms. And I know that graphic's kind of blurry, you can't really read it, but it does list off the defense mechanisms that Freud named: sublimation, humor, anticipation, rationalization, reaction formation, regression, identification, displacement, projection, fantasy, denial. All of these things our brain does to keep us as sane as we can be. So if we're struggling, we don't go there. If our brain won't let us go any place we don't think we can handle. So that's important to know too. You are going to see people really engaging their defense mechanisms through this crisis, and you're going to see yourself doing that too. Trauma, memory, and the dirty dishes. So part of this kind of defense mechanism system that your brain does is it does this really interesting thing with memories and storing memories. Healthy memories gloss over time. They get recorded differently. We call that nostalgia. For those of you that are adults, you probably remember when you were, I have a freshman in high school right now. When you were starting high school, people were telling you, oh my God, it's great. This is going to be the best time of your life. This is awesome. You should be so excited. Those were the days, my best days, right? That's not teenagers telling you that. Right? That is much older people telling you how great high school was. Kids that are still in high school, that just got out of high school, are not saying how awesome it was. That is what our brain does. It goes down in our memory as glossier, more beautiful than it ever was, right? That's, Brene talks about that with Make America Great Again. That this is a nostalgia effect. People are imagining that things were wonderful, but in reality, maybe they weren't so wonderful for everybody. Trauma memories, however, remain vivid. They don't get stored in the filing cabinet. They are there as if you just experienced it. An example of this, both my grandfather and my husband's grandfather were World War II vets. My grandfather did not see combat. and was not traumatized. So he came out of that experience and talked about World War II as the good old days. He was on the ship, he had the greatest friends, they traveled, they had adventures. And my husband's grandfather was on the beach of Normandy, and he talked about it at, like, bombs, horrible things happening, as if it, and he could remember it in absolute vivid detail, as if he had never left, and could easily, a trigger could bring him back there as if it was yesterday. So that is kind of what our brain does with memories. If you've had trauma pre-verbal, memory kind of works alongside a language. So when traumatic things have happened before you had language, they get filed in kind of really sensory ways. So you get triggered around, sights, smells, cause a physical reaction that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, that can be hard to explain. So trauma is, one of the challenges with trauma is it's easily triggered. Something can remind you of it and you're right back as if it was just happening. Sight, sounds, smells. Like the dishes, you can let traumatic things pile up. You can do, I can't deal with this right now, I'm going to come back to this later, and put it in the sink, so to speak, right? You can do that a bunch, but eventually it gets bigger and more intrusive and smellier and dirtier, and you're gonna have to deal with it. That to me was one of the big challenges of adulthood. I felt like coming out of my childhood, I was like, phew, got that over. Life is gonna be great now that I'm out of that environment. And ha, 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 wrong. That is when you have to now start making sense of what happened, processing the feelings. So like this, you're gonna have to deal with, I call it like the curse of middle age. I thought it was gonna be like smooth sailing, not so much. And that's important to know during this time too. If things are too much for you, you can shelf it. You can like come back to that later, but just know you're gonna have to come back to that later, or it's gonna continue to become more and more intrusive. So like I said, with childhood trauma, the symptoms often present when you're finally safe, when you finally feel ready to deal with stuff. Now, ta-da, your brain gives it to you to start dealing with. So don't be surprised if that has already happened to you, if that continues to happen to you as this unfolds. It is, again, a delayed reaction when we're talking about post-trauma. And again, for many people, they have their own life traumas on top of what's going on now. So many times this shows up when you're trying to have adult, romantic, trusting relationships. You realize the damage that's been done to your ability to trust, your ability to be hopeful. A lot of times in trauma, the things you're doing got you through. I've heard a lot of people talk about being detached, right? And dissociating. That is incredibly helpful to keep your brain safe in the trauma, but it's gonna come back to you when you're safe. Those things persist. Often people feel too much or too little. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But with trauma, we always go extreme, and we go extreme one direction or the other. It's the same thing, it just looks different depending on the individual. We often experience guilt, shame, and blaming ourselves. It's very common for people to withdraw from others and to feel disconnected, numb. When people have had a lot of trauma, their baseline stress level is so much higher. When I was at Department of Mental Health working with people with major mental illnesses, I did find like their base level of stress was so high that you throw one problem at them, that is a problem, but one problem could send everything, turn them into a puddle. Things that we find traumatic, like getting your phone shut off, just way too much for people to handle if they've already had so much stress in their life. So this is the kind of PTSD symptom trauma breakdown. And the thing, and you know, Erin said this as well, we're saying like It's normal to respond this way. Trauma is a predictable response to something extraordinarily stressful. It impacts all areas of a person's life and can significantly affect their functioning and the quality of their relationships, right? So all of the symptoms relate to the trauma. It's a stress response that doesn't turn off, and it causes emotional dysregulation. People have often been talking about that a lot right now, that just kind of feeling melty and feeling like saturated, that one thing is going to make you cry or make you yell. You can't keep it together. And what happens in trauma? So if the trauma, say, is COVID, you go one direction or the other. You're either in the anxiety, intrusive, you can't get enough, you want to pay attention to it all the time, you need more information, or you go the other direction. I'm going to ignore it, pretend it's not happening, total other side. So either way, you're on one side or the other. This can be easy to see when we're talking about sexual abuse, because we see people respond often one of two ways. They either become hypersexualized. Every interaction is about sex, and it's all that because that's all they're thinking about. Or the other side, they're organizing their whole life to not think about it. Stay away, don't look at me, we're not talking about this, we're not looking at it. So you can see that that is still the stress response, right? I have a friend who is a police officer, and she's retired now, but she was in New York City during 9/11. And she said the only way she got through it, she listened to classical music and did nothing else. She couldn't pay attention to any of the news. She couldn't talk to people about it because she was dealing with it. She was right there in it. So any moment she wasn't working, she needed to just not even think about it for the sake of her sanity. So do that, understand that whatever's going to help you get through this is valid and valuable. You can see then that avoidance, you do everything to keep yourself numb, you stay away from anything that might remind you, you don't want to talk about it. When you're in the intrusive zone, you may have flashbacks, disturbing dreams. I know my husband's talking about waking up in a panic, it's playing out while he's sleeping, the stress and the drama. And that leads to all kinds of challenges to just cope with this stuff. Some of the elements of trauma that we're seeing here that make it likely we're going to respond in ways we'd respond to trauma is the fact that it was kind of sudden and unexpected. Right? We really didn't, most of us didn't plan for this, or we began planning a week or two out. But for the most part, we didn't see this coming. We are all directly experiencing it right now. We're experiencing it as overwhelming and uncontrollable. Those are two big pieces that make for a trauma when it's not in your control and you didn't really, you're not able to manage it. You feel overwhelmed. It keeps us feeling helpless, like we're not safe, and like we don't have control. One of the biggest things in trauma that I've learned a lot about is the secondary adversities, right? So COVID is its own thing, but now we're really dealing with not having enough supplies, not having enough resources. Maybe people are losing their job, maybe they're losing their housing, and all of these kind of secondary things become huge problems. So COVID is the one piece, but all these other elements are things that people are struggling with, and that's what happens in trauma. For many of us, we are doing the things like Lori said in the beginning. We're eating too much, we're drinking too much, we're smoking, we're sleeping, we're watching too much TV. I want you to understand that that is completely normal, right? It's absolutely what we all do. Another friend who went to a presentation on this said, that slide really helped me have less shame about my drinking. And I was like, yay, that's exactly what I want. But also, Lori said in the beginning too, my team and I have been talking about it. we completely understand that that's what's helping people get through, but especially substance use and abuse can have all kinds of unintended consequences and can really create more challenges later on and more challenges for other people in your household. To understand self-medication, I've got these 3 pictures here. First, we have the therapist. You go to the therapist and she says to you on telehealth, because it's COVID, give me 2 or 3 months in therapy and you'll begin to feel better. Great, I'm going to teach you new coping skills, you'll feel better. The psychiatrist says to you, give me 2 or 3 weeks with this new med and you're going to begin to feel better, right? The bartender, on the other hand, says, give this shot 2 or 3 minutes and you'll be feeling better, right? That's why it's so common. Garber Mate is kind of another one of, in my Brene Brown list. He's not quite as awesome as Brene, but pretty close. He believes that almost all addiction has trauma at the root, and that it is a way of dealing with this unwelcome, uncomfortable. If your mind is healthy and you're not having disturbing thoughts, then you don't need to alter your brain. You don't want to be drunk or high, right? It's often because you're trying to escape the pain that life is bringing you. Self-medication is the most frequent way people cope with extreme distress. It is effective in the short term, but it can have long-term consequences and a lot of unintended implications for other people in your life. To go along with the kind of the substance use slide is the iceberg, right? And this is another Freudian thing. We all know the deal with icebergs, right? You see the tip, but underneath is so much more. And that is sort of like our kind of our psyche. What you see, the way I'm presenting to you, if you see cause for alarm, you're right. There's a lot more underneath. So if you see reasons to be concerned about someone's mental health, if you feel like they're depressed, they might be having suicidal thoughts, you're right. If you have cause to be worried about someone's substance use, you think they're drinking or smoking, you're right. So please, it's important to know that so that you trust yourself when you're thinking about talking to other people about what you see. It really is, a lot of trauma therapists will say this, trauma happens in relationship and it also gets healed in relationship. So being that person who reaches out and says, hey, I see this little piece of you struggling. Are you struggling? That can be so incredibly helpful for people. All right, now I'm kind of shifting into what we do about this. So we know we've got all this trauma. And at Worcester Addresses Trauma, childhood trauma, when we set this up, we decided, like, we know all the bad pieces, all the bad things that happen that cause distress for people. But we also know a lot about the people that are going to be okay and that are doing well and that are doing better. Lori Dawson talked about it in her talk about the contributions of positive psychology. And that kind of brought us to this idea of resilience. The idea of resilience is the bounce back. It's not, you're going to be fine, you can take no matter what's thrown at you without impact. That's nobody. But resilience is, you're going to be able to bounce back when this is through. You're going to be able to take the challenges that are on your plate and deal with them. And it's going to be hard and it can be ugly, but at some point, you have everything you need to get back to where you want to be and who you want to be. And that's what we mean by building resilience, your ability to manage and bounce back. You can see that little justice scales thing. That's a big kind of basic concept in public health, community health, prevention work, is this idea that we all have risk and protective factors. The risk factors are the bad things that happen to us, but the protective factors are the good things that happen to us, the things we have in our lives, the resources we have. And often as helpers, we can't impact that risk stuff. That's so much harder to do something about. But we can go with the protective factors, right? The idea that we can build up the good things in life that make it easier to deal with. So for that part, taking care of your basic needs first, right? And in the next few slides, I'm going to be turning it over to Narissa and Caitlin and Mary, and they're going to talk a little bit about this stuff. But basic needs, making sure you get sleep, making sure you have food, making sure you have the things you need is the step one of being resilient, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs is also on this slide. And the idea there is like, if you don't have a safe home, we're not going to be worried about your self-esteem. Like, we'll worry about your self-esteem when we get there, but we got to build a foundation of you having what you need before we can think about, you know, your spiritual, your self-actualization. We'll get there, but not without your basic needs being met. Anything you can do to decrease your stress builds resilience. Structure and routine are one of the things that create safety more than anything else. Caitlin's going to talk about that too. But when we psychiatrically hospitalize people, what we give them more than anything else is structure and routine. So they don't even have to think about what to do now, about when to have lunch, about when to go to bed. They know. We want it to be automatic. And that's something that's really helped people that are able to do that. It's really helping them through this. Anything you can do to be in the present. I know that this is scary and this is challenging, and my mind jumps ahead to friends that have risk factors. They're older, they have pre-existing conditions, and I'm worried about them. But right now in this moment, I'm safe in my house. I'm like hanging out in my room. I've got a lake view here in Rutland. So just reminding myself that in this moment, right now, everything's okay. Right? Nothing horrible is happening. We can really get overwhelmed by this sense of impending doom and danger. And you got to learn to just talk yourself off the ledge. And that the mindfulness in a lot of ways, and some of the things Lori talked about, is the talk yourself off the ledge. It's okay right now. Right now, this bad thing isn't happening. When people are connected to each other, when they feel seen for who they are, when they feel cared about, that is the magic. And that's what I was talking about earlier with our community. I think this is a community where we make a place for people. We care about them. We show we care about them. We come together. And all of that can instill hope and gratitude. And Mary's going to talk a little bit more about that. This is my my laundry list of things I wanted to quickly talk about before I turn it over to some of my colleagues. For me, the idea of problem location, when people have trauma, so often they believe they're the problem, right? The problem is them. The problem is their personality, who they are. That's not what the problem is. The problem is what happened. The problem is outside of you. You're responding in normal ways to something messed up that's happening in the world. So remind yourself, you're not the problem. Pandemic, that's the problem. Abuse, that's the problem. Homelessness, that's the problem. It is not located within you. And knowing that can help you feel a little bit more control over it. This idea in a lot of therapeutic, it's a DBT idea, dialectical behavior therapy. A lot of families who cope with mentally ill family members are taught this idea of radical acceptance. The radical acceptance, and I've seen a lot of people talk about that on Facebook or wherever they're communicating, it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. Some of that stuff. The graphic on this slide, it's raining. The non-radical acceptance is like, I don't like rain. I wish it wasn't raining. If it wasn't raining, I could be able to do all this fun stuff. My day is ruined because of the rain. So when you're focusing on that, you're not serving yourself. On the other side, radical acceptance. It's raining. Yup. Right? It's just it is what it is. Being detached can be a little bit of a gift. Taking that step back and seeing I got no control over this. This is not on me. I can only do what I can do. Seeking validation, I'm thrilled too that there's so many resources, there's so much help out there, and there's so many new ways to really connect with people that care about you, that do that. It's incredibly important. Validating each other's experiences. When people tell you that it sucks for them, believe them. Don't try to say, no, it's not that bad, because it's not. But when you tell people that in the moment, they want to punch you, right? So don't be, there's this whole thing about traumatic growth. And we all struggle with that. The idea of traumatic growth is that because of the bad thing that happened to you, you are now stronger than you ever would have been had you not gone through that, right? Good concept and absolutely true. People don't want to hear that while they're in the trauma, right? Don't tell me how great it's going to be in 6 months when we're all peace, love, and granola. Maybe so, but I don't want to hear it. So just recognizing that however you're feeling is true, it's valid. We'll get there, it will get better, but probably not right now and probably not in the real near future. So just want to validate that. I feel your pain, everyone, right there with you. All of us are there right now. Anything you can do to control your thinking and your mood, trauma really gets us on a loop. It's like a skipping record. So whatever you can do to go on a different path is serving yourself. I have like funny playlists of silly dog videos that I watch. There's a few dog videos that get me every time. No matter how many times I've seen them, no matter what's going on, I crack up at that ultimate dog tease. Never fails. So find those things for yourself. Also, that helps your whole household. If you can find ways to be happy and upbeat and think of something you like listening to music, dancing, emotion is contagious. And sadly, the negative emotions are the most contagious. So when one person in your household is anxious and ruminating and stuck, you're going to get sucked into that unless you're consciously trying not to and offering yourself other ways of being and thinking. Recognizing your own stress response is going to help you. Noticing, for me, it's the blood boiling thing. For you, it might be something else, but recognizing when you're starting to feel stress and addressing it with trying to make yourself feel better is going to help you in the long term. One thing we can all do now is give ourselves something that we're working on that's going to benefit us on the other side of this. Taking a class, doing a project you've been wanting to do, anything you can do now that secures a better future for yourself is time well spent. This is a great time to really build relationships and learn about people that are different from you. As a nation, we struggle every day with difference and recognizing people, we don't get them, we don't understand where they're coming from. Now's a great time to try to figure that out. We are all in this together, and that can really be a bond, and we can really make it a bond. Creativity, Narissa's going to talk about, and resources for basic needs. So I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend Narissa.
Hi, everyone.
I'm going to interject for just a second.
Great.
It's about 1:15, so I just wanted to make us aware of the time and to remind people that I'm keeping track of your questions. If you do have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat and I will relay them to the speaker. We haven't had
People
any.
can ask questions to everybody, like if they have a question for Lori Dawson or a question for Narissa or Mary, that's all good too. So just let Lori know your questions.
Yep. And another thing is somebody had mentioned a Brene Brown podcast that's happening.
Ooh.
So if you have any suggestions or resources that you want to share in the chat, I will compile them and make them available with our slides and presentation later. Okay.
So hi everyone, I'm Narissa Hopper-Ketter, and as you know, I work for UMass Memorial Community Relations. Worcester addresses childhood trauma. I am a resilience worker, community health worker, resilience navigator. And today I was going to talk about some creativity. So in this pandemic, people are really stressing out and we're getting overwhelmed. And we're going to talk about some things that you could do to help relieve some of the stress that the pandemic is causing. So in my household, I am in a family of 5, and I have 3 people in this household that need to follow a curriculum. So we're really creative. One thing that I find is helping keep normalcy is to maintain a schedule. So our schedule, we still have breakfast between 7 and 8:30. Don't mind her, that's my granddaughter Delilah. We're working on a sticker book as we talk. She has been putting so many stickers on this lady's face. So what we do is we get up and we have breakfast, and we usually start with the educational day. So you want to try to keep things normal. You want to try to still get up and get dressed. I mean, I know it is tempting to stay in jeggings and pajamas all day, but we do get dressed around here. And so we're working on activities. And usually when we watch TV for any type of entertainment, I've tried to keep it light with comedies. I feel like we all need some comedy right now, some inspirational shows or movies. But it's important to self-care. So just going off of what was said previously by Lori and Amy is self-care is important. So limiting the news is one thing that I have found to be helpful in this household, because it's overwhelming. You feel doomed. You feel like you're next. You're worried about everyone in the world, your neighbors, your loved ones, yourself. You want to do more, but yet you can't because you don't want to put yourself at risk. So I've also found that when I report to the children, because they're asking about school in the quarantine, I like to reinforce that, you know what, you're doing a really good job following the quarantine. Thank you for washing your hands. That is good questions that you're asking, because we are worried about our neighbors and our friends in the world, and you're doing your part by staying in the quarantine. Just let them know too that they're doing a good job. And instead of us, stressing out like, oh, I want to go out, tell the kids too, like, I'm thankful that we're home. Oh, when I was at work, I wish I could be home with you. Now look at all this time that we have home together. That's one thing I'm doing to help relieve stress with the kids, because we want to keep up a good front, And also, I think it's important to include your children or whoever you live with in your household in every part of the routine of the day. So now we have in this household, everybody makes lunch together. It can be an activity with shapes and colors and textures. And we talk about, nutrition and things. Everything is an activity. So, cooking at home ec is good. And I also have guys helping me with chores where they hadn't been so helpful in the past. It's funny, everybody wants to vacuum now. So just simple things like that. So that's how we're being really creative, and we're remaining positive. Thank you, Delilah. Thank you for that. So it's important to try to keep the stress down to a bare minimum. It can be difficult, well, not so difficult, but challenging, but we can all do this, and we are all in it together, not only in this country and the world, but even in our household. We're all in it together. If you hear of any information that you think will be helpful to someone else, it's important to share. If you're at home with a special needs child, I have a child who's nonverbal, and when you change the routine of someone who's on a spectrum, it's devastating to them. So it's really important that I maintain a schedule and structure in this household, or there could be a lot of behaviors. So that's what we're doing on my end. I'll give Caitlin and Mary some time to talk. I know we're running out of time. And thank you for joining us for Trauma Training Tuesdays. If you have any questions, if you'd like to reach out to us direct, we are still working. We have done intakes over the phone throughout everyone's time of need. We're definitely here to help you out with resources in the community that are available to you. So please don't be shy. Reach out to us. We're here to help. That's what we are happy to help you. And that's what we're here for. Please use us. Thank you.
Thanks, Narissa and Delilah.
You're welcome. I'm going to go back to mute, okay?
Okay, that sounds like a good call. Brene, our buddy Brene, talks a lot about being creative, and you could see Narissa and Delilah are finding creative projects. So often people think like creative is just drawing and painting, but like I made a really awesome playlist for COVID. That's creative. Other people can do all kinds of different things. Sorry, Narissa.
So Amy and Narissa,
Yeah?
we have a question about how someone makes a referral to Worcester Acts.
You got that, Narissa?
You can go ahead.
You can just, I will post, I think I'm going to post a slide deck on our Facebook page. You can just directly call either Narissa or DJ. I'll post that out and send that out, and you can just get right in touch with them if you'd like to work with Worcester Acts. The only requirement is just at least one child under 10. Go ahead, Narissa, you look like you wanted to jump in.
Oh, no, I just wanted to share that one thing I did that the children really were involved in, everybody in the household participated. It's behind me. I created a calendar for April. So the calendar includes activities that we're doing daily as a family, but it's a quarantine calendar. So my grandson put the numbers, we are counting down to the quarantine is over, and that gives them something to look forward to, and they know they can keep track of how long they've been on quarantine and when it's going to be over. Just wanted to throw that in there for people with little ones, and you can put stickers, any type of whatever you have. We use pom-poms, glitter. We threw everything on there.
That's awesome. I love that. Caitlin, did you want to talk? Caitlin put together this self-care wheel, and she's going to talk a little bit more about scheduling. You got this, Caitlin?
Yep, I've got it. So I think Narissa actually gave a couple of really great jumping off points. I am going to say right now, I am so thankful I don't have children in the home, because everyone who is coping with a child in their home is pretty impressive, because there's a lot of disruption that's going on, and everything that previously would have made sense for self-care may not make sense anymore. And I found for myself, and I'm happy to hear that that worked for Narissa too, a schedule is really one of the best things that's worked for me. We live in a time, I see online all the time, everyone's talking about how it's airport time, and time doesn't really matter if it's 9 a.m. or if it's 2 p.m. or midnight. A lot of people are working from home and have more flexible schedules. Where I went off the rails really quick was in that of this illusion of I have time. I'm going to be locked in my house for a month. We've got it. So in creating a schedule, I found out a point where I was starting to kind of drown in all of this, was how to break up a day and making sure that we focus on each of these sections of self-care, so that you're focusing on your physical self-care. Going back to that hierarchy of needs. Do you have a safe place to sleep? Do you have food? You know, it's a big joke, but do you actually have toilet paper? Or are you being creative and, you know, making do with what you have? Because that is a lot of people's reality. Stress eating. Who's really going for the carrot sticks right now? If you are, please tell me your secrets. But then also making sure that there is time for focusing on your psychological self-care, your emotional, spiritual, personal, and professional every single day. I think when we had a different world that we were living in, you didn't have to be as mindful about making time for each of these things. I know I had expectations and you followed through with them, but now there's not deadlines to a lot of our expectations. Routine may not matter as much depending on what your living situation is. It may be very different if you have a family member who's outside of the home. So how do you kind of fit all of these different categories into your daily routine while still having all of that time to be gentle with yourself. When you fall off the routine, how can you lovingly get yourself back on? If people want to kind of look at an example, if you want to go to the next slide, Amy, I do have kind of like a really sort of simple sample quarantine routine. And it's just kind of waking up, making sure that you're taking care of your personal hygiene. I think it was Narissa who was talking about, you know, we got to get dressed. There's just no staying in PJs all day. So am I wearing the same things I'd wear out? No. But I'm getting dressed, I'm changing, you know, making sure that there's movement. There may not be as much movement when you're, you know, inside. And then making sure there's time for something for your soul. So whether that's meditating, journaling, reading. So again, finding those spiritual and emotional needs, creating a section of productive time. What I've found for me and for my partner is we do well if we split that into 2 sections. If I think back to like once upon a time when we were out in the world, for me, it made sense to just work straight through. Now that I'm in quarantine, that doesn't work for me. Focus is really tough. So how can I, you know, how can we fit all the musts with the wants and the needs all in together? So this schedule works for me. Someone with a different biological clock might not have that. Making time to go outside. Before I did this training today, I went for a quick walk around my neighborhood, and it's amazing what that can do just for your mood in a couple of minutes. Also, when Narissa was talking about lunch, it's interesting to see because in my household, it's just myself and my partner, but our big meal is lunch now because that's what makes sense. So all of our routines can be changing, and it's okay to roll with that. And if there's a day that you fall off, it's okay. This is a weird time for everyone. You can try again tomorrow. So I think that's really the piece about trying to create some structure in your life, but not having it be such rigid structure. Is there a time to meet your physical needs? Have you met your professional needs? You know, have you taken your medical needs into consideration? I know if I'm not on a schedule, I'll forget to take my medication in the morning, which then creates a chain reaction. So it's very important to be mindful of how all of these will interconnect as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Caitlin's really good at modeling, not being hard on yourself, being kind, giving it another chance. And that's absolutely what we wanted her to model and to talk about. So hopefully that helps. Now to talk about our kind of more big picture hope and spiritual needs, I'm turning it over to Mary Robbins.
Thank you, Amy. So spirituality is, in my opinion, somewhat different than religion, right? Spirituality is a common connector that we all participate in this higher order, and we have these connections together that I think are really coming out in full force during this time, when I often talk about gratitude and how if you really think about what you're grateful for and not what you're proud of, and you translate that into someone else's gratitude list, they can be very different, but your common denominator is gratitude. And so there's this great book that was written about living hand to mouth, and the author talks about how what she's grateful for is being able to go to a dentist who could fix her teeth, because when you have rotten teeth from being poor, people don't really look at you very kindly when you're on a job interview. Well, at the moment, how amazing is it that many of us are in the same place of gratitude where, do you know what I'm grateful for today? We have bread. We have bread in our house. And I find that we're at a place where I think even more than ever, I'm hoping that spirituality, this idea of being connected with one another, this idea of practicing hope and trusting in the future, is something that each of us can relate to, no matter what we believe in or who we believe, from a religious standpoint, right? So today, this week happens to be Holy Week for many Christians. It adds a layer on to the feeling of spirituality that I have in my body. I have this sense of, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but you can literally feel the energy in your body, and every single one of us can do that every day, and we have this kind of connection to one another in this higher order. It's more important than ever, I think, for us to really tap into that spirituality, whatever it means for you. It does not mean the same thing for everyone, but gratitude and hope are things that we can use to connect each other and with each other. The other day I saw a cardinal in a forsythia bush. It was absolutely stunning, and I found myself staring at it until it flew away. Taking time to really view nature and the seasons of life and the seasons of, the earth, the spring that's awakening all around us, hopefully, is a way for each of us to connect or reconnect into a place where we are grateful, where we are practicing hope, where we are feeling this connection. Amy gave me the book, Pray Without Ceasing. How many people did Amy give that to for Christmas? Right? I think she bought like 100 copies. It is not, my sense is that, Robin is Catholic. I'm not Catholic. So there are pieces about it that don't make sense to me, but we can get beyond sort of that human construct of religion and tap into wherever we are at. I used to tell my kids in Sunday school, I used to have them sit under a table, and they'd say, Mrs. Robbins, why are we sitting under a table? And I'd say, well, because we're going to pray under the table. It doesn't matter where you are or who you are. God or whoever is in your life is the higher being, loves you, accepts you, wants to be part of you, and reminding ourselves of that, of our connections to each other, that each of us is valid as a human being and worthy, is very important right now. Everyone has talked about giving each of ourselves a break. That is so important right now, and feeling that we're enough every day, every moment of our being. We are enough. And that's what, in my world, God tells me. Whoever it is that in your world does that, I hope that you're doing that for yourself. And every day that you turn on a light switch, and you have light, and you have health. I understand that people are worried. My mom is 94. I'm so grateful she's not in a nursing home. I have a 4-year-old foster son who picks up on everything. I am actually going to share this training with the foster community, because it's such a clear, understanding that kids in foster care have experienced trauma, and with parents experiencing more than ever, we all need to, have each other's back. So I'm so grateful for this, and I just hope everybody continues to understand there is a cycle of life. There is a future. There is goodness in the world that surrounds us and awaits us. And we need to, I'll just say one more thing. When my daughter was 5, she was diagnosed with epilepsy, and we were at Children's Hospital constantly. And every time we left, we would turn around and we'd say, thank you. Thank you for the fact that we can leave today. Please be with the kids who can't leave. And that gratitude has grounded my kids for their entire being. And so I just, sometimes adversity gives you the opportunity to realize just how grateful you are, and how important the little things in life are, like the cardinal in the bush. So thank you very much.
The thing about Children's Hospital just gave me like shivers down my spine. That was really, really poignant. Thank you so much. This is just the very last slide. We can all feel really powerless right now, but we're not. There is, I call this the power of you. Like Mary said, and Caitlin said, all of us said, this is the time to model self-care and compassion. The last slide, I had that poem up that kind of talks about, you know, life exists on many levels. What's going on in our mind is gonna mean what's going on in our homes, what's going on in our community, and change at any point creates change through the whole cycle. So thinking about the fact that all of us maybe have this time right now to build our gratitude base, our connections to others, our reasons why we want to get up and get dressed in the morning is gonna serve us later. There's so much opportunity, and we've all been so impressed, and many of the people on this Zoom are involved in, you know, mutual aid Worcester, coming together to support each other. If you're not involved in it, you can find it on Facebook. It's just called Mutual Aid Worcester, and it's a pretty open forum for people to ask for help and give help. And that, to me, is really, really important and powerful. You can be using this time. And one of the things that I always talk about is this idea of social capital. It's great to have it would be great to have tons of money. I would love that. I don't. But social capital, knowing I have a person I can call who works here, or I have a friend who knows about this, that in some ways is even more valuable than money. And I know that that's what I love about this community. We can keep building that social capital. There's so many ways for us to do for others and to ask for help and receive help. And that is going to build relationships that last beyond this. Anything we can do to create a happy world for ourselves is amazing. In the realm of mental health, one of the ideas is that insight is the best predictor of success. Meaning, if you recognize that what's going on is a symptom of depression or a symptom of anxiety, you're going to do much better than somebody who doesn't have that space between themselves and the symptom. So that's our hope for doing this, is that you can take it as, I'm normal, I'm just responding the way everyone else would respond. And that's going to help you get through this. Another Brene idea is the idea of making generous assumptions. What that means is the belief that we are all doing the best we can, that we really are, even when people are behaving in ways that make you so mad or so disappointed. Just calling on the belief that they are really doing the best they can, that any challenges come from their past history, their past trauma, their belief system. If you believe they're doing the best they can, you're going to have a better time of it. You're going to be able to be more patient and tolerant of yourself and others. And I know everyone who's here today is doing everything they can to make the world better. And I know that you're going to just keep on doing that. And we are so grateful for that, all of us. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward to being able to see you again in person. We're going to take questions after this because we go till 2. Our next Trauma Training Tuesday is the last Tuesday of the month, and it's going to be on the trauma of racism with Joyce McNichols and Susan E. Millett. Both of them are academics and experts in the topic. I think it's going to be great. I hope you'll tune in for that. Again, we're so grateful for everyone who's tuned in. We're going to archive it on our page. We'll share out resources, and we've all been gathering lots of resources. So let us know if there's something we talked about that would help you. We're happy to send that out.
Amy,
and just thank you so much.
say.
You what?
I had one more thing I wanted to say. I just
Great.
wanted to encourage everyone to participate in a physical activity. Even if you're not going outside, you can YouTube. Just physical activity will help with mental stress. It will help alleviate some of the anxiety going on. If we just do something physical, do it as a family, do it individually, but it's tremendous for what's going on in the world. It'll make you feel so much better. Get the oxygen going. Like Caitlin said, if you are able to go outside and get some fresh air, that's wonderful. If not, still take the time to just do something, even if it's just yoga or stretching. I really want to encourage that. It's going to alleviate so much stress and tension. So thank you again.
So in the chat, I've been trying to follow people's suggestions and questions. We do have time, as Amy said, to have some discussion. We have two people who have been waiting. So first there's Linda, and then Bill, and then anyone else who'd like to join in, but I'd like to try to keep that queue. And these are questions for any of us to want to share. So feel free to unmute yourself. And right now I'm gonna stop and ask Linda to share her comments.
Hi, this has just been such a wonderful experience and so much information that's so helpful. I come from this from a little different perspective as an ordained minister. And sometimes, you know, religion has been very harmful and hurtful for people, and I understand and respect that. But it occurs to me, we talk a lot about finding ways to be happy, finding ways to be comforted. And I go to the Psalms. I read the Psalms every single day, a Psalm every single day. And I think about the generations of people who have wailed and lamented and shook their fist at God. There's a need for that kind of release, that anger. Why are we experiencing this? And so I would also encourage people not to push down those feelings of anger, but to, you know, all religions have some ways of ritualizing that way of relieving oneself. And my son was killed in an automobile accident 20 years ago. And I remember on the ride home from seminary, getting out of the car and just screaming my lungs out at anger. And I'm not going to say that ended the trauma, because it's still there, but it was a release. It made it possible for me to go through the day after day after day that came following that. So I pray for all you who are working on the front lines, that you find ways to express the anger of the injustice of our systems, of the ways that people are suffering needlessly because our leaders have fallen short. And so that will be my prayer for each one of you, that healing and hope is possible. All of the things that were mentioned, absolutely true and terrific, but anger and wailing is also part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Bill, did you want to speak? You need to unmute your, I can do it. Okay, so now you're unmuted.
Yeah, no, I had my chat window open and it wouldn't unmute myself for some reason here.
Okay.
I have two questions, but I'll stick with, I think, the most important one. Let me try to bring this back down again. I work, I have a lot of personal stress, and from 10 years as a police officer, and I do a lot of mindfulness training. And a lot of the things that some folks have mentioned today are some of the tools that have been talked about. But I sometimes feel like the tools are thrown at us in my arena that I'm in. And so, and I'll read this question now. Folks treat my stress as something that I should just ignore. If I'm grateful, for example, it will all just go away. And I feel ignored, and I don't know how to address this, because a lot of the times, I know Mary spoke about being grateful, and that's what reminded me of this. And I totally understand being grateful and doing grateful things, or things that should, you know, make me feel grateful. But at the end of the day, they're not necessarily doing anything. So I wonder how, you know, folks in this position can address that.
I want to say, Bill, I'm so sorry that that's the response that people give you. That really, that piece about validation, I think, really speaks to this. What you've experienced is absolutely valid. And when people want to take that away, or I think that's about their discomfort and not at all about your truth. You know, whenever we see people in pain, we wish we had some quick fix. We could just give you a peppermint and you would suddenly feel better. But that's not real. And we know that that's not real. And that was kind of that piece about traumatic growth, when everybody wants to tell you, like, you'll get to the other side and it'll be better. It may be true, but until you're on the other side, hearing things like that do exactly what you said. They really trivialize the pain and the hurt. And that sucks. That's not helpful at all. So I'm really sorry that that has happened. And I hope that when it does, just you can do your best to recognize that that's their discomfort. And you know, that is the Brene stuff. Like, what she talks about is, you know, genuine empathy. To have empathy for another person means you're sitting in that space with them. And when people can see you're hurting, a lot of times they want to default to sympathy, like sucks to be you, right? And because they don't want to go there with your hurt. And but when you find people that will and do, there's nothing that's more effective than that. So I would say, just, you know, kind of continuing to find places. I'm like in a number of online support groups. I know, how cool is that? But I have found them incredibly helpful for me. And one of the exciting things about the time we're in, that we're having this while we're at least all connected kind of by the internet, like, take the time to find a group of people that have similar experiences, because I think they are going to be able to understand and go there with you. Some of the things, especially from policing, that have happened, as much as I would want to give you my whole heart of empathy, I can't even imagine what that was like, and the fear and the danger. Hearing what Linda experienced, I can't imagine. Starting to imagine what that's like is so painful, just starting to go there, that I don't even want to. And so recognize that people we are all doing the best we can to be here for each other. When people have a lot more pain, it's hard to find people that can be there with it.
Sure, thank you very much.
And I'd like to jump in and say, Bill, I don't think you interpreted it this way, but I just want to be really explicit. I don't think any of us who are trying to offer suggestions were trying to minimize anyone's pain. And I agree with everything that Amy says about really being present to sit with someone's pain is both incredibly difficult and incredibly generous. And I think our focus today was trying to give people some resources to kind of get through the moment. And I think that's where sometimes people fall short. It's not just this toolbox, like, okay, so I can be mindful and all of my pain is going to go away. That's just not real. And I won't swear on this video, but my therapist talks about AFGOs, another effing growth opportunity. And I can tell you, I've had a lot of AFGOs and I freaking hate them. So like Amy was talking about, that is there opportunity for growth? Yes, but it comes at a tremendous personal price. And we need to acknowledge that. And I think that, you know, I've been in support communities where people have talked about manifesting your desires, but then if something bad happens to you, it's your fault because you manifested this, and that's kind of like what you're saying is kind of speaking to me like they're giving you really short shrift, and that's bullshit.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because that's exactly what it is. It's like they throw the toolbox at you without the expectation of, well, is it working or not for this person? And they think that one size fits all, and it doesn't in a lot of cases. And so I've gotten a lot out of this webinar, so I'm looking forward to rewatching it again and following up with some more pertinent questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's great. Anything else, Lori, or should we?
I don't see, and no one else has asked for time, but maybe I'll ask anyone who is still here. If you have any questions, comments, concluding thoughts, feel free to unmute yourself and share with the group.
I really like the point that Linda had made about accepting the anger in all of this, because there are legitimate things that people are losing or missing out on. You know, people are canceling weddings. My graduation got canceled. So I also kind of heard in Bill's piece of when someone does have something, when there are these personal things going on, and someone's coming with like, it's okay.
Right.
It's okay to sit there and say, actually, it's really not. Like, I just had to cancel my wedding. It's a whole thing. Don't know how I'm going to pay for this. It's actually okay to sit in that for a second and say, this really does suck. Is it always going to suck forever? No, but it does suck.
Narissa, do you want to speak to that at all too? Narissa has a whole thing a little speech she gives about this. You're muted still. Are you still mute? I think you're muted, Narissa. Can you unmute?
Okay, all right, I unmuted. I'm sorry, I'm unmuted.
Okay, that's okay.
No, I wasn't going to add to that. Caitlin, that was plenty, but yeah.
I was thinking of the thing that you always tell me, like that you give yourself a little bit of time for a pity party, right? Like I've gotten that from Narissa. Narissa will be like, you know what? I'm going to have a pity party and I am going to feel bad for myself and I'm going to go there and I'm going to think about how much this sucks, but I'm going to put an end in sight because I know that thinking about it too much is going to just not serve me. So to validate that for herself, go ahead.
So honestly, I mean, Caitlin, I think that's great, the thing she said, to give yourself a break, really. So pity parties, we've all been to them, you know, but who wants to stay there? I just don't want to live there. So I just decided at a point in my life to focus on the positives, and it's really helped me get through so many difficult times. I was in a place where I was negative. When you're around negativity and misery, it consumes you. I mean, it just sucks the life force out of you. So if you can, you know, give yourself a break, and okay, you had a pity party, but shake it off. Leave that party. That's not my last stop at the pity party. So everyone, you know, I think it's okay to have a little pity party, but don't live there. I don't want to live there. And I haven't seen anyone who enjoys living there. It's not a happy place. Even there is something positive in every situation. If you could just focus on that positive, you'll start seeing more positivity. And that's what I'm doing even in this situation. I'm just focusing on the positives. I mean, like Mary said, when she used to go to Boston Children's Hospital, I used to have to go there too. I have children that were in the NICU. I have a child that wasn't expected to live through the night. I am so thankful to be quarantined in this house with him. 21 years later, like I'm just so thankful and happy that we're all together. I mean, you know, the paranoia about the pandemic, it's affecting us all. It's getting closer and closer to home. Now, when we go on Facebook and we look on the news feed, we can put a face with it. We know people, we have relatives and friends that are posting pictures. It's getting closer and closer and closer. So I'm just focusing on the positive. I'm really thankful and happy that no one directly, you know, related to me or in my circle, a group of, you know, friends and colleagues have been directly affected, but I know that day's coming too. So for right now, I'm going to take the positivity of this day and this happiness and this healthy time and be thankful for that, because tomorrow it may be a little harder to focus on the positivity. So that's all you have for me. I'm not going to be pitiful today. I'm wearing my happy pants.
Thank you. Anything else? We're going to call it a day. All right. Again, it's so great to see so many faces. I do realize how, Megan, I do realize how much I really rely on gathering times to see people I care about. So even just seeing people's pictures is making me happy, but I definitely really miss seeing so many people I love in person. But Megan Foley's here, yay. So thanks again, everybody. Hope it was helpful. You know, sending love to all you guys. We're so grateful that you're still here, that we're still all positive enough, because the months ahead are not going to be easy, I'm sure. And knowing that we have each other helps more than anything else. So thank you guys all so much for being here today. Hope you'll join us for the next one. And lots of love. Mwah. Good mental health to everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Be well.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
Meg.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, now we have to leave the group. How do we leave the group? Okay, leaving the group. Robert, come help me leave the group. Leave the... Okay, leave meeting. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Narissa.
Stay healthy.